Ooh, new banner. Trev's Hockey Show. I'm the Trev. It's still too sweet. So anyway, we're continuing with my review of all the NHL outdoor games, and today we're on outdoor game number 8, or the 6th Winter Classic, depending on how you're looking at it, really. I think it's fair to call this one the big one. You know how we refer to the 04-05 season as the big one? When it comes to outdoor games, I think this should be called the big one. And today we're talking about the 2014 Winter Classic, which saw the Detroit Red Wings host the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I'm going to forewarn you, there's a lot of backstory before we get to this game. So, be forewarned. If you want me to put the time bumper as to when I actually start talking about the game, let me know. But, yeah, there's a lot of background we got to cover before we actually talk about the game. So, with that in mind, let's talk about it. So, the 2014 NHL Winter Classic took place on January 1st at Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, by day, Michigan Stadium is home to the University of Michigan Wolverines. But it also holds the distinction of being the largest stadium in the United States and the Western Hemisphere, as well as being the 3rd largest stadium in the world and the 34th largest sports venue in the world. Now, hence the name, the Big House. Now, this is also the first time, here's your first. Every one of these games has a first. This one's no different. It's the first time the NHL used a university or a college stadium as a host. And it won't be the last time. Just a heads up. Now, if the pictures haven't already done it justice, I'll break down the attendance number here. The attendance was listed at 105,491 people, which in terms of outdoor game attendance records, it kind of has the new attendance record for at least a couple of miles. As you can see, it beat the old record by a few thousand. Now, the selection of Michigan Stadium wasn't so much the NHL's decision as much as it was the University of Michigan's decision. And that really is tied to the success of the Big Chill at the Big House, which saw the Wolverines hockey team defeat the Spartans in front of 104,173 spectators. So the interest in hosting not just an NHL game, but more specifically the Winter Classic, really began to take shape. And on February 8th, 2012, the University of Michigan Board of Regents, authorized their athletic director to negotiate with the NHL in regards to hosting said Winter Classic. So maybe it was high on the NHL's list of things to do as well, because they came to an agreement the very next day with the announcement in regards to hosting the Winter Classic set for the January 1st, 2013. Yeah, you heard me right. It's supposed to be the 2013 NHL Winter Classic. It was marketed as such and everything, as evident on their banner from their announcement in 2012. Now, this game would be the second time in outdoor game history that would be played by 2 original 6 teams. The first time obviously being the 2009 Winter Classic. And it would also be the first time, there's another first, that a Canadian team would play in a Winter Classic, as normally Canadian teams are relegated to the Heritage Classics. This again won't be the last time. And here's the reason it wasn't played in 2013. There was a bit of a lockout. Always something that comes in the way, right? Every damn time. And although I'm sure that nobody wanted the announcement to be made, the announcement actually officially came on November 2nd, 2013 to cancel the 2013 Winter Classic. If they hadn't canceled after November, or if they had canceled after November 2nd, they would have been contractually obligated to incur additional expenses. And, being you're in the middle of the lockout and you're definitely not playing this game on time, you have essentially no choice but to postpone it, right? So it got thrown off the docket for 2013, with the 2014 Winter Classic being rescheduled and announced on April 7th, 2013, with both the teams and the date remaining unchanged. So that's a bonus. This would also be the first of 6 outdoor games, played in the calendar year of 2014. The most outdoor games that have ever been played in a year to date. And the explanation behind this is because there was no All-Star game, because they were sending players to the Olympics, which I'm strongly still considering if I want to add a NHL at the Olympics playlist. So this series of outdoor games would be their premier event for the year. So if you want to throw down your watered down argument, I'm here to listen. Guaranteed. Temperature at game time was 13 degrees Fahrenheit, and with the wind chill it made as 0. Now in Celsius that's minus 10. With the wind chill it made it feel like minus 20. Yeah, I'll say. In Kelvin that was 262.5 kelvins. That was a bit of a backstory. And that's just explaining how we got to this point. Now we're going to go over the rosters. I keep forgetting Alfredsson was a Red Wing once upon a time. But as far as players who played for the Red Wings in the 2009 Winter Classic, only Pavel Datsyuk, Daniel Cleary, Nicholas Cromwell, and Henrik Zetterberg are the only 4 remaining. Howard got the start with Mrazek as the backup. And your head coach was Babcock. Samuelsson, Gustafsson, and Helm were your healthy scratches. That's your Red Wings lineup. So for the Leafs, James Van Riemsdyk is playing in his 3rd outdoor game, having played in 2010 and 2012 with the Philadelphia Flyers. Bernier got the start, and Reimer's your backup. Leafs were coached by Carlisle at this time. And here's your Leafs scratches, and we have to talk about John Michael Liles. Despite being a healthy scratch, he still managed to dress up for warm-ups. And this is the moment where he's being told that he was just traded, along with Dennis Robinson, for Team Gleason over to Carolina. So I think this is the first time, maybe the only time to date, that a player was traded pre-game, despite, already being a scratch. But haven't heard of one happening since. We'll talk a bit more about the Gleason effect at some point later in the video. Now I think we can move on to jerseys. Now I'm not gonna lie, I think Detroit wins the jersey game in this game hands down, combining elements from the 30s with elements from the 80s and putting it on a completely quote-unquote throwback design. Pretty sweet. I mean, the numbering alone wins this one for me. Of course, this season the A's get worn on the sleeve and not the jersey, whereas Toronto comes in heavily inspired from the jerseys worn from 1930 to 1934. Not a bad throwback. And if you've noticed, there's no white jerseys. It's red and blue. So the visual, when it came to the stands for this, was nothing short of awesome. I mean, despite, a few here, a few there, it was literally half red, half blue. Love it when they do that. Alright, so if we're ready, let's talk about a hockey game. Alright, so the first period started pretty much like most these games do. Scoreless. But it wasn't short of opportunities or quality chances. And for what we lacked in goals, we definitely made up for that with some penalties. Justin Advocator would take the first penalty of the game for cross-checking at 6:39. Joffrey Lupul would take a cross-check of his own at 11:04 of the first. And because that was deemed a little too high, that cross-check cost him $10,000. Ouch. And so to round out the first, Dion Phaneuf would close out the penalties with a holding call at 16:21. So while the Maple Leafs would ultimately seem to be spending the first trying to find a rhythm, they managed, like Toronto would, to get outshot 13-5. So again, not for a lack of effort, but it also helps, when both goalies seemingly came ready to play. So on to the second. So not gonna lie, the second period almost felt like it was going to go the same way as the first period went, as there'd be nothing really to add to the score sheet until just over the halfway point of the period. Jay McClement would get called for high sticking at 11:04. And then finally, 10 seconds after the penalty expired, we get our first goal of the game. Daniel Alfredsson, the guy I keep forgetting, played for Detroit, and scored his 11th of the season from Henrik Zetterberg and Brendan Smith at 13:14 of the second period to give Detroit the 1-0 lead. Nearer to the end of the period, Jacob Kindle will get called for a delay of game for closing his hand on the puck at 17:23. With just 37 seconds to go in the period, just as his penalty was expiring, James Van Riemsdyk would score his 15th of the year from Phil Kessel and Dion Phaneuf at 19:23. So another second or two would have counted as a power play goal, but because the penalty was expiring and he scored, they didn't count it. So, we in the second, tied at 1. Now this has got to be the period where Toronto played their best hockey of the entire game, and despite being outshot 14-13, might I add. But that's still just over half the shots they had in the first period, so that being said, let's talk about the third. So the third period would see Toronto get their first lead of the game and get it early. Tyler Bozak would score his 5th of the year, with Dion Phaneuf getting his 2nd assist of the game at 4:41 to give Toronto the 2-1 lead. So after a little more back and forth and a few more good chances, James Van Riemsdyk would take a hooking call at 11:45. Now, while Detroit couldn't capitalize on that power play, they did tie the game. Justin Abdelkader would score his 5th of the season, with Brendan Smith picking up his 2nd assist of the game to tie this at deuces at the 14:28 mark. And that's pretty much it for the rest of the period. No more penalties to speak of, no more goals to speak of. Lots of opportunities more for Detroit than anything, as Detroit did outshoot Toronto again, 14-6. Just saying, Toronto wasn't shooting a lot. So let's talk some overtime. I don't know what I'm talking about. Overtime solved nothing. Both teams were evenly matched as far as shots goes, with 2 apiece. So, third overtime game in outdoor game history tells us that we're going to a shootout for the 2nd time in outdoor game history. This could get interesting. So no pressure on anyone, right? It's just a shootout in front of 105,000 people. No pressure, right? Daniel Alfredsson would shoot first for the Red Wings, but he'd miss. JVR would be next, but he'd be stopped by Howard. Pavel Datsyuk would be up next, and you don't even have to ask. It's Pavel Datsyuk. It's a shootout. Of course it's going in. And it did, to give Detroit the 1-0 lead in the shootout. Joffrey Lupul will be next up for the Leafs. Of course he put it past Howard. So of course it's tied right back up. Tomas Tatar would be next for Detroit, and he would only get stopped by Bernier. So this leads us to Tyler Bozak. The game on his stick could give Toronto the win. I mean, of course, he's not making any mistakes. I wouldn't. Shootout, Winter Classic, that's a game winner all day. I would take that shot. And this gave Toronto the 3-2 shootout win. So, first shootout since 2010. 2008. 2010 was your last overtime game. And this one was quite enjoyable, despite the fact that Detroit heavily outshot Toronto 41-24. So I guess I'll give you my solid opinion of this game. No, I mean, despite the wrong team winning, this was a really great game. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, everything about it just had all the makings of being great, if not better than great. And the fact that it was essentially a goalie showdown, I mean, the goals that were let in early, they weren't pretty, but they were goals. I mean, we can keep going. I mean, 2 original 6 teams. The fact that it happened to go to a shootout was the largest attended, if not just in outdoor game history, but in league history. It just makes it better. I mean, I loved this game. I liked it a lot. Now, that being said, here's some outdoor game stats. Don't have to scroll very far. Toronto making their debut. Detroit still up top. Enjoy it while it lasts. But back to John Michael Lyles while we're at it. Remember, we're talking healthy scratches, and Miles was a healthy scratch. Well, he was traded to Carolina, but his first game in Carolina, was against these Toronto Maple Leafs. And it was 2 days after the game. And he would score once in a Carolina 6-1 win. So isn't that something? Kind of like poetic justice. Like, hey, I can't play this, I'll just score against you and a win. Why not, right? But all told, good game. So it's another one of them Trev's hockey shows. I want to thank you for tuning in. Don't think I don't appreciate the gesture, especially if you've made it to this point. And if you have made it to this point, hey, that's awesome. I do appreciate it. To everybody who's come along for the ride, thank you very much. You're helping my algorithm a lot. So that's a great thing. So let's keep that train going. If you like this video, if you like what I'm talking about, you just want to say hi, you want to let me know you're here, hit that thumbs up button. If you want to, that red button, if you haven't done so yet, that one that says subscribe, go ahead and hit it. Trust me, it'll help my counts. So that's never a bad thing. Moving forward, well, we're in 2014, and I did mention there are 6 outdoor games in this calendar year. So next, as far as outdoor games is concerned, we're talking the Stadium Series. And we'll talk more about it when we get there, but in the meantime, not in between time, be looking forward to some Trev. Later.